for me. So, all
right.
Yeah, my bad. I mute Discord naturally for a number of reasons because the conversation happens during raid, and Twitch is super oversensitive. So,
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you, some of the
Zozie,
conversations we used to
welcome.
have some of the stuff I've said would, get me ostracized from normal society. Never mind.
Well, if you
Twitch terms of service.
I mean, you can't see me in the guild for a moment. I know him in real life. So
I was gonna ask you about that. You know Randall and Galvin from real life, right?
Sadly, yeah. Oh,
No,
I like them.
don't say
I
that.
like
They're
them.
good guys.
They are.
Guys.
They are good guys.
Yeah, they're both really good friends of mine. I enjoy Randall and Galvin to to a high degree. They're gonna be playing Shadowlands with us, which something else we'll get into. But
really,
yeah, you got actually suggested. You were in my suggested friends on Facebook. So,
really.
Yep, I know your real name.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's fine. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Gavin always calls me by my real name, anyways. He even said it in looking for group chat a while ago. So it's whatever. It's not like,
dude, we're all good. I was talking with Randall before I got on here, and Randall said you're a great guy, and so I'm
Randall thinks so highly of me, and I'm glad he does. I don't know why he does, because I'm kind of arrogant. So at least like in my ability to play the game, I'm arrogant, but I try not to be a butthole about it at the same time.
That's MMO players in general,
That's very true. She does.
One of the things that we used to talk about in Do a lot, which I'll go ahead and do the intro. So, Mr. Big C here from the RBC, did a video on, guilds breaking up, and he mentioned Do. I am the guild master of Do. So, we're here to talk, generally about Classic, what happened with Do, why it broke up. And, I thought it might be good to have a video out there for Kirtonos to, let everyone know what happened. We weren't like...
It's always better when you hear it from the horse's mouth,
Yeah, it's not like we were a server or anything, but we did.
Hey, Ken, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream.
And for all the new guild masters who are
you too,
currently
Zozie.
inducting some of my former members who chose to play continue playing Classic WoW, which is about half of them.
Yeah.
After the guild disbanded, it'd be a good resource for them to have. And then also for anyone who's not currently playing Classic, or somebody who is maybe thinking about starting up a guild, I figured it would be a resource for them as well.
Terabyte, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream, everybody.
So, the Kirtonos Discord, feel free to message me and talk to me. I'm a relatively friendly person, unless you pop off and say something.
Space, thank you for the resub, dude. Appreciate the support, guys.
Yeah, that's who I am. And I sort of already know who you are, Big C. Like I said, I've been talking to some people, talking to some of your IRL friends. They all speak pretty highly of you.
Well, I'm glad everybody thinks so highly of me. I think, honestly, I think Galvin hates me. Like it's a love-hate relationship.
I mean, I'm the same way with Galvin. I shit talk that guy all the time. But it's like a loving shit talk,
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Galvin, has a very, a locker room attitude.
That is facts.
And that's sort of why I get along with him.
That is. I like all them guys. I mean, we had a good time raiding together in Middleton, and I hated that we didn't stick together after Middleton decided to.
What guild did you go to after you left Middleton?
I'm in Victory and Death now. Me and a few others.
Oh yeah, they were sort of looking at that guild as well, and I've heard nothing but good things from them. I'm sure you're having a great time over there. I being in the GM channel on Kirtonos, I sort of get the skinny on what's going on and all the other guilds.
Oh, there's no doubt. I'm kind of jealous because it's not that I am kind of nosy. I'm not gonna lie, but it's like content reasons, I would love to know what's going on. So,
I mean, honestly, it would be pretty boring for you to be in there. It's a lot of sort of us talking about sort of different people, and I don't want to drag up. Listen, it's not my intention. This is something that I am a person of strong principles.
Mhm.
I live my life by a certain set of rules that I've established for myself, and generally I try not to break those rules. And one of those things is I don't really like to talk bad about people if they're not in front of me. If I'm going to say something bad about you, I'm going to say it to your face. So, I won't bring any names into this discussion, but that channel was extremely useful when I had a potential member join the guild who had a very bad server reputation.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, I'll get that.
I was able to, talk to some contacts in the best. I know the Guildmaster 7, him and an IRL of mine went to the same college.
Oh, wow.
And, I was able to talk to some of his class leaders and officers. He wasn't present in the channel, and sort of ask them, hey, what's up with this guy? And, I went to the GM discussions channel of Kirtonos and, asked around, and that's mostly what it is GMs collaborating between each other about
who to avoid. I was lucky in that sense when I was trying to recruit Horde for Middleton on who to avoid, because people would just tell me where I was slowly building a name for myself on the server through the YouTube videos and stuff. So, and it did make recruiting easier to a degree, but recruiting is just painful and awful and a number of other things, to be honest.
Yeah, the entirety of guild administration is awful. I like to think I had a good server reputation. I was always that person who got funneled to enchants first, so
I've never heard nothing bad about you. And honestly, if you was a bad person, I know Reynold them wouldn't have went over into your guild either. So
yeah, I always did the no premiums, tip what you want, enchant service. I mean, even now I'm not even playing classic, but if you need a subtlety to cloak or an agi to gloves, I'll just log on and do the enchant for you free of charge, because it's just resources that I've built up.
I'll have to remember that. No.
I mean,
some of them enchants are hard to find on the server, just for the fact of the server slowly dying, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's a reason for that, honestly. So are you into game design at all? Maybe this is where we can sort of broach the discussion about where Dew had some problems with classic WoW. Do you play D&D or any tabletop games?
Bro, I love D&D. I've got
so
in my background I've got books and stuff. D&D's my 5th edition's my jam. So
so I for background, I have been a dungeon master for probably 15 years at this point. I started when I was 13, not to date myself, so somewhere around there. I've been playing for Dungeons and Dragons longer than that, but that's really when I started to GM games. And I have the people that I played with always wanted to homebrew shit and always wanted to make their own rules. So I actually have a very good grasp on game design.
Yeah, you'd have to as a DM for D&D.
One of the things I learned, sort of in my later teens, is that my players were seeking different experiences rather than what 5e was trying to offer them. So one of the big things that I've always said is, if the game mechanics don't support what you're trying to look for, then you're probably playing the wrong game. So let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons 5e, and then we can sort of talk about classic WoW after that, right?
Right.
So Dungeons and Dragons 5e rewards experience based on killing monsters, right?
You
now,
can
there
do
is
a
milestone.
Yeah,
you could do milestone XP, and that's up to the Dungeons Master discretion.
Right.
I don't really like milestone XP because it puts too much, power in the hands of the GM. I like for the mechanics of my game system to, reward the player via mechanics, not anything that I personally am trying to do, right?
That makes sense.
For the purposes of this discussion, I'm not going to talk about milestone XP, but let's talk about, how Dungeons and Dragons rewards its players through the built-in XP system, right? So Dungeons and Dragons rewards people based on the number of monsters you faced and the CR level difficulty of the monsters that you're facing, right? And you can add those two values together. There's a really good resource. I don't know if you know about this, called Kobold Fight Club.
Yeah, I know about the Fight Club.
Yeah, Kobold Fight Club is a great resource.
It's amazing.
So basically, you can add those two values together and come up with a flat amount of XP. You split it evenly among your, party members.
Right.
Now, if you were trying to have a mystery-themed D&D game, you would not want to use that rule set, because the mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons 5e reward you for killing
stuff. Yeah.
Whereas if you're trying to play a mystery campaign, you might want to reward your players for finding clues, for creating new contacts, right? And so you might just want to play a different game, something like Blades in the Dark or Stars Without Numbers, like games that have systems that reward the players for what you're trying to do, right? And so with that sort of like philosophy in mind, coming from that D&D background, let's talk about like classic WoW real quick. What is classic WoW trying to reward you for doing? So you play a hunter, right?
Yeah.
I play a warlock. These are not mechanically difficult classes. In fact, I would argue that...
Is there a mechanically difficult class in classic WoW, though?
I think Fury DPS, with lining up procs and making sure you're using your abilities at the right time, is probably the most mechanically intensive class. But compared to...
Totem Twisting probably would suck too, to be honest.
Yeah, but Enhanced Shamans are just... Their dirts are knocked in the dick until TVC, dude.
Yeah, they're mean.
Ellie Shaman's actually been simming really well, but that's not mechanically intensive.
I think Hunters are to a degree just because of the trinket swapping stuff, and I absolutely hate doing it, but...
Yeah, so like Hunters... a little bit. Warlocks, there's you just cast Shadowbolt meme, but like, so for reference, you can look up my logs on Callus. When I was with the Orenthul, I was at like a 99 parsing Warlock. I held top 1000 parses for many of the bosses in BWL when I was doing, raids with the Orenthul.
Yeah.
And even sort of having a more casual, laid-back guild in Do, where we didn't require everyone to be fast, we didn't require everyone to be fully world buffed. My best perfect average was like 95 or something.
Still good.
And I still managed to do like really well. So, but back onto the topic, what is Classic WoW trying to get you to do? Right, and there's this issue of mechanics, right? I think retail WoW and some other MMOs reward you for being mechanically gifted, right?
Yeah.
You put in the work to learn your rotation and sort of, how to use your abilities, all this sort of stuff, and the game rewards you for that by making you do more damage and sort of giving you a better chance at clearing the encounters, right? Classic WoW, in staunch opposition to that, rewards preparation.
100% agree with that.
Specifically, I think Classic WoW awards, more than anything, to the player, the time that they put in, right? So
that's kind of Classic in general, like the amount of time that it takes to do anything in Classic, leveling up and such. It's a time-consuming game. Period.
Right. So I think like that's something important to note. Going forward, as we sort of talk about this, even when it comes to guild management, right? Even in the social aspects of the game, this is the sort of thing classic WoW rewards. You know, when it comes to being a guild master, your guild is proportionally as good as the time that you put into it, the time your officers put into it. You know, if I had to guess and do the amount of time that me and my officers were putting into the guild, you know, we had 5 active officers. I would guess that each of us was putting in, you know, all together. Let's not do each person because that would vary highly between the person.
Right.
But all of us together, probably putting in, you know, around 200 hours a week worth of work into the guild.
There's no doubt. And the way I view the guild management too is kind of, in a sense, it's a business model.
Absolutely.
You know, the GM is like, you know, you're the CEO or whatever you want to, or, you know, you're the store manager. Then your officers are the regular managers, and your class leads are like, you know, the third managers or whatever. Just a small bump up. And like as the GM, you literally have to have your hand in every cup that there is in order to ensure that everybody's doing their job and everything is being handled properly. And I think it's one big issue that guilds have on Classic is that the management issue has hurt a lot. I think that's essentially what killed Nova, to be honest, and a couple other things too.
It killed the Orin Thul. I can tell you, I have not watched your video with Neck Rage, but I can tell you, you know, having to manage 80 different personalities and, you know, running 2 raid teams and logging on at 4 a.m. for world bosses is extremely stressful on a person. He also did the rank 14 grind.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like anybody that grinds rank 14, you come out, your mental health is horrible when you come out of it. Anybody, like most of the people that I've talked to that's grinded it, while they're in the process of grinding it, they're like, my mental health sucks. Like, I'm depressed.
Yeah, for sure.
And I get that.
You know, when I would send the Orenthal, the best thing that I thought that I could do was fucking just like shut the fuck up, take what loot was given to me, and just try to come with my best performance every week.
I mean, that's not necessarily a bad attitude to have.
Because I understood from like listening to guild meetings and like listening to some of the other personalities in the guild that, you know, our officers and guild masters were under a lot of stress. You know, Neckrage, Harley, Buckycat, these are all people who I formed really good relationships with, who, you know, were pivotal members of the Orenthal leadership. And, you know, I'm still friends with them to this day. I think the reason we're able to maintain that friendship was I wasn't a pain in the ass to them and the Orenthal, you know?
I mean, that makes sense. And like when you've got 80 people and then you got 2 full 40 mans going, and then like you never got to the point where you had all the 20 mans going too, but you got all those personalities, then there's going to be cliques in those raid groups too. And I couldn't imagine, like, and I know us hillbillies can be pain in the neck people too, because we're very outspoken people. We don't typically bottle up our feelings.
I grew up in you know, North Carolina.
Okay.
People don't usually associate that with being a southern state, but
yeah,
let me assure you it is.
I would.
So you know, I appreciate a straight shooter. I vastly appreciate that over somebody who's, you know, I'm gonna have to find out what they're actually thinking through, you know, rumors and whatnot. And you know,
that's aggravation, always, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. So I have pulled up here the letter I wrote to the guild when we disbanded. Would you like me to, you know, read that for you?
Yeah, that's fine if you want to do that.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to give, you know, you and your viewers and sort of anyone who's going to watch this a good perspective on, you know, why broke up, why guilds break up, and sort of, you know, all of this is going to tie together when I read this letter and sort of talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
So in the letter I sent to the guild when we broke up, which we broke up on November the 3rd, I said, Dear Do, I'm writing to give my formal notice that I will be dissolving Dew in Classic WoW on November the 3rd, 2020. It was not a single event that led me to this decision, but rather a slow burn of consistently dealing with the same issues from a large percentage of our raid team. I vastly underestimated the selfishness of the average person when I started this guild. I would also like to state that I spoke with the officer corps about this decision, and the sentiment was shared heavily. The friendly guildies who always volunteered to help and who gave their time and effort to help make this guild succeed were what made it worth it for so long. I sincerely thank those of you who believed in our vision and leadership. We will give you time to add each other on Discord and stick together as you move on with your classic adventures before cleaning up the server. We would like to make this a place where moving forward we can maintain and grow friendships that we made playing the game. As for the next steps, I'm going to outline my actions the next coming days. Dew is going to be formally dissolved in November the 3rd, 2020. The guild bank will be liquidated and used to pay back the members who made so many donations. We had one member in particular who donated like 10,000 to the guild bank, which made content possible for a lot of the weeks. So we obviously wanted to pay her back.
That's super nice thing to do.
Yeah, it's awesome member. In fact, I'm gonna put this person on blast. I don't know what guild they're in now, but Marindia is the member who donated almost 10,000 gold to the guild bank. She is a excellent guild member. I highly recommend. She's a resto shaman. I highly recommend her to anyone who is looking for. You've truly captured a gem.
I'd say her being a resto shaman, yet she's probably quickly found a guild. Cabs, thank you, dude, for the resub. Really appreciate it, my guy.
Lastly, we will continue to keep the server open and host events for people who are so dear to us. Stay tuned, as we're currently organizing and raiding in Shadowlands and looking for other opportunities and games to play with our friends. Sincerely,
I didn't think about turning off alerts. I should have probably done that.
You know, there's a couple things that I'd like to highlight here, right? I vastly underestimated the selfishness of the average person when I started this guild. That is a very true thing about Classic WoW. Earlier I talked about game mechanics and what Classic WoW rewards. Now, there are a lot of mechanics of Classic WoW that make Loot Council or EPGP or DKP, you know, whatever loot system you're doing, extremely unrewarding.
Yeah.
So first off, as opposed to TBC, you get maximum 3, excluding totem drops, 3 pieces of loot per boss. But the raid size is double, so it's 40 people.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah. And
Cap's gonna be super nice and hook the chat up, guys.
In order to make it succeed, has to farm their consumables, has to get their world buffs. You know, like, these are just things that, you know, make the raids smoother. Obviously, you can do the content without them, but you know, we'll get to that in a second. Classic rewarding time invested makes good loot councils get put into bad situations, right?
Yeah.
Because we would have situations where, you know, we had someone whose performance was much better than another member, but the other member had been with the guild for 8 months and was pretty much here through our inception and had stuck out like us trying to like fill out our raid team and, you know, was loyal to the guild. And so people would ask, like, you know, is the loot system based on performance? Which I got another, you know, bone to pick with Classic Rager, which is that those motherfuckers don't listen at all when their leadership talks.
Who don't?
I think that's pretty much universal. But
you talking about Blizzard?
No, just talking about like the general player base.
Oh,
Most
okay.
people don't listen when their guild leadership talks.
That's very true. I believe that because I've seen it on Alliance and Horde. So
yeah, so when we were running Dew, we actually went through the trouble of, like, you know, interviewing every person who came into the guild and specifically telling them what criteria we looked for on Loot Council, which was attendance, attitude, and performance, right? attendance. If we give you a piece of loot, we want it to work for us. That means you got to be here at raids. Attitude, nobody likes a negative Nancy in raids. Our chances of success, go increase exponentially if the raid is in good spirits and you have a good positive mental attitude. And then, obviously performance, you need to be playing your class correctly, which, for most classes ends up being pressing one button consistently throughout the boss fight. So
I know the Lions Guild that I currently raid in now did a big interview. Like they're a super sweat guild too, though. They like the world bus. They like the consumables and stuff, and they're serious.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. So like, when I say it puts good loot councils into bad situations, right? Like, I know you said you were running EPGP, but let's say your guild was loot council, right?
B&D's,
your loot council might have had a good reason to give that Jom Gabar to another player. They might have been, for instance, in Do, we had an Excel spreadsheet where we literally tracked every piece of loot a person had received, and we like bolded pieces of loot that were best in slot for that phase. And like we went over the moon was trying to make sure that the loot distribution was even amongst the entire raid.
I mean, here's just like, was I bummed out I didn't get jumped? Not sure, but it's one of those things too. It is what it is. I don't try to get upset about loot cancel. I would like that. Like the unused trinket I have is garbage, to be honest. I need a better one. So Jom or Battle Guard would be great to have. I could just suck it up too and get Earth Strike, but that involves effort and I'm lazy. So
yeah, but I mean, it's like, yeah, man, like that puts your loot council in such a like bad position when you're having to deal with those sorts of situations,
right?
Because you only get 3 pieces of loot, and in terms of like end raid bosses like Cthulhu, like Scepter or Darkstorm Gauntlets or Icestock Wastecord, you can only give that to one person. And I don't think a lot of people have like the the clarity to like step back and look at the big picture and go, oh, well, here's how the caster loot is being distributed. Here's how the hunter loot is being distributed. Here's how the melee loot is being distributed. I don't think a lot of people have that sort of clarity. And this is just my own personal experience running the guild. Like I said, I vastly underestimated the selfishness of the average person, but it seemed like every week I had to have a sit-down conversation with someone about why they didn't get a piece of loot, right? Why did this person get it over them? And in a lot of cases, they felt personally slighted because they had invested the same amount of time to come with the same amount of consumables as someone else, but they didn't get the piece of loot. And it's an unfortunate situation to be in. The mechanics of the game don't necessarily always reward you for the effort you put in. And that's a big problem with Classic WoW, right?
The other bad thing too is people are just greedy. Right? Yeah. I mean, just at the end of the day, and I've noticed this in like the Alliance guild I'm in now is not like it, but like some of the earlier Alliance guilds that I was in, because I was raiding as Alliance before Horde. I completely re-rolled Horde to play with friends on this server, but the early Alliance guilds that I was in, people were like super greedy. Like I remember we was doing BWL and the boots drop for Warriors. It's BS. I don't remember what the name of it is.
Chromatic boots.
Yeah, chromatic boots. And the way the guild done it was open rows. Main spec, all spec. You get one piece, whatever, that sort of thing. And the boots dropped. And hold on, I just got raided. I'm sorry. It's ridiculously loud.
Raid.
Thank you so much, dude, for the raid. I really appreciate it, dude.
Talking about Classic WoW.
But yeah, the boost dropped. This one dude had been in the guild for a minute, and he was pretty geared. And the other dude was a fresh 60. They rode, and he got out rode, and he absolutely made it a huge issue. Like, he flipped out over it. It was, he went over the top with it, to be honest. But when you join a guild, you have to understand that this is the loot system. If you don't like it, then find another guild that has a loot system you enjoy better. That's really how it should be.
Right, and I think the concept of the guild was sort of diluted. Like, if you look at the timeline of Classic WoW, you had so many.
Thank you, Tick, for the raid, bro. I appreciate it.
You know,
I'm talking to the former GM of
start, and then the numbers have consistently dwindled this far. And say what you will about retail WoW, which is a conversation we can have as well.
Oh god!
But the personal loot system is the best thing they did in the game in a long fucking time.
I don't like the personal loot system, but I think the reason why I don't like it so much is just the RNG aspect is so ridiculous in retail. But you're not wrong either, in the sense of it being a better system at the end of the day.
Well, it's better to have RNG or Blizzard to blame for you not getting a piece of loot, rather than, you know, the community you're supposed to, you know, be building your WoW experience around.
That makes sense.
Because, like, a guild, to me, when I created Do, my vision was, let's have a guild where we can create a community of people who will want to play games with each other 5 to 10 years down the line.
That's
a community of people who will want to stick together, and, you know, generally a group of friends who share common interest and a common goal.
You know,
Classic WoW doesn't reward that. It's why you've seen good guilds go down the shitter, you know, time and time again.
I think there's multiple problems with Classic WoW in general too, and now that people have more information on hand, you know, because it's a different beast compared to playing in vanilla. Because in vanilla, there wasn't information, there was Thoughtbot, you know, and it wasn't right half the time when you was looking up quests. And you know, there's been private servers and everybody. I'll be honest with you, the only raid I cleared in vanilla was the Nixia. I didn't know world. I didn't know. Yeah, it wasn't a good experience when I think about it. In a rating sense, it wasn't. I didn't know world buffs existed at all. I didn't know it.
Yeah, well, there was an interview with, like, one of the original.
Yo, Andy, what's good, buddy?
With Classic WoW, and, you know, he basically says that, like, world buffs were just something cool that they put in the game because it seemed fun. You know, they were never meant to be abused to, like, the level they are now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
someone put in your chat. Does that make sense? If it's personal loot, what does it matter which guild you run with? So let me address that real quick. As a guild master and building a community of people that you want to have fun with, it does matter, right? People who want to pug and have the sort of solo experience are going to do that. That's fine. They have Group Finder for that. They have Raid Finder for that. Go have fun doing that shit. But in order to do the harder levels of content, you need a guild in retail WoW.
You do.
And that guild is going to be people who you share common interests with. And in a lot of cases, for instance, I ran a Wrath of the Lich King guild. And a Cataclysm guild. I still have those people on Facebook that I shared those experices with. I still keep up with them. Those are lifelong friends that I have.
I have none of them.
Right?
I'll rephrase that. I have 3 of them on Facebook because we're real life friends. But I wish we did keep up with. I was in By the Sword and we was a pretty good guild. I'm not gonna mention our world rank and stuff, but some of those guys, like the way they raid lead and stuff, like, man, like it changed my whole attitude and my thought process when it came to raiding and stuff because of those guys. Like, I was a pretty good player, but like those guys really, how raids was conducted and the awareness and other things, it really took it to another level. And it would be awesome to even just to say hello to those guys again. Just be like, are they still playing WoW? What are they doing? I'm just curious about stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still keep up with those people. They ended up making a community with some of the old members of our guild, and I still keep up with them. They're wonderful people, and I think when it comes down to personal loot, we have to look at again. We're talking about D&D 5e and what the mechanics of the game reward.
Personal loot keeps you from fighting.
WoW, yeah, personal loot keeps you from fighting, and retail WoW awards you for mechanics. It awards you for being good at the game. You don't get the personal loot if you can't down the boss, right?
Right.
So I think that sort of incentivization is, the sort of thing that maybe Do is looking for. WoW Classic has its problems, for sure. I don't think it's a bad game at all.
No, I mean I'm loving my time on Classic. I'm enjoying it much more than what I did BFA.
But from a guildmaster perspective, these things make the game toxic.
And Phase 5 makes life harder on you as a GM too, in my opinion. Because Phase 5 kind of sucks. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, Phase 5 is pretty bad. In addition to that, I think there's another aspect of Classic WoW compared to retail that's sort of awful, and that's having to do previous tiers of content. For instance, you're always going to want to run a Molten Core because you're probably still going to need Onslaught Girdles. You're probably still going to need Band of Valkyria. You're probably still going to need Thunder Fury Bindings. You might need Toeps still, right? Like, these are, like, in-game BIS items that you're not going to replace until Naxxramas.
The thing, too, about retail, and it pertains to having to go over old content, is just the catch-up mechanics that's in that game when it comes to raiding and stuff. You don't have that at all in Classic, in my opinion. Maybe ZG was meant to be one of those raids, and maybe AQ40 is too, or AQ20, I mean, but...
Yeah, so ZG and AQ20 are sort of like your catch-up mechanics, but they don't really ever, broach being as good of items as you would get in MC or BWL. And we're sort of like approaching a topic here. First off, I think ZG and AQ20 have BIS level items that it require you to run them until you get those items, like a Cloak of Consumption, a Touch of Chaos until Phase 5 came out and you get the Wand of Karaji Nobility, which a good fucking luck if you can, your guild's killing that boss last and not trying to get the Boots of the Falling Hero or whatever.
Right. I don't even know what my Horde guild does.
Right, the token for the Ring of Unspoken Names for Warlock stands out in AQ20. These raids have BIS items in them, which makes you have to run the 20 mans if you want to be, fully BISed out. But I think in regards to that, having to do the previous tiers of content and the catch-up mechanics, like ZG and AQ20 were ineffective at providing like a catch-up to the current tier of raid content because the items that they provide that are a middle ground between your BIS items, you will want to eventually replace to increase your individual performance.
Right.
And they only add burden and strain onto your guild by having 2 lockouts a week. I mean, think about this from like a guild perspective. Just what you're asking of your members, right? You want your members to run 2 20 mans a week, AQ20 and ZG, for Idols, Cloak of Consumption, Touch of Chaos.
And you're going to be doing Idols in Phase 6 too. That's the thing.
Yep. You're going to be doing both those raid, twice a week, all the way up until Phase 6. You have to do Molten Core, because Rag Loot and Bindings are necessary. giving a Thunder
Yeah.
Fury, even on like, let's say you've got all your warriors and all your tanks with Thunder Fury, you're still gonna want to get them on rogues.
Right.
It's still fucking best in slot, right?
But the percentage of it dropping to is like,
yeah, it's low, but you still want to do it from like an optimization perspective going into phase 6, right? And having that debuff, be constantly up on the boss is, never a bad thing either. You're gonna want to do BWL for Nelth's Tears. You're gonna want to do BWL for Malfurion's Bulwark. You're gonna want to do BWL for Chromatic Boots, right? Like,
that makes it hard not seeing
the current
findings and
content
stuff.
loot. Like, let's say one of your warriors gets Boots of the Fallen Hero. It's nice to be able to give one of your other warriors Chromatic Boots, right? So that even though they may be waiting on Boots of the Fallen Hero, they have like a 95% replacement, just like ready to go.
Almost as good. So it's not a huge.
Almost as good.
Yeah.
The
So
difference between Boots of the Fallen Hero and Chromatic Boots is very small.
Right. So it's not a big deal.
So in phase 6, what you're gonna have is you're gonna want to do ZG and AQ20 twice a week. You're gonna want to do MC, BWL, AQ40 to make sure that everyone's getting the best pieces of loot from those raids. And you're going to want to be doing Naxxramas. Now, if you think about the average time to complete those raids, that is a huge fucking commitment. Just not even, farming the necessary consumables. You're already looking at like 10 to 15 hours worth of content.
I think.
And then to farm the necessary consumables for those raids and to come world buffed. I mean, you're basically asking someone, it's a fucking job, like 30 to 40 hours a week. That's really hard to, ask of somebody.
I don't disagree with that. I think you get to the point where, AQ, like if you decide that you want to do AQ20 and ZG, then that's just something that you pug, right? It's like there's guilds that still try to form it, but the amount of people I've not ran AQ20 in a minute. I know I've got 2 idols, all my Horde Hunters sitting in my bank, extra idols. So I'll just have to go into ZG just to get the enchant when I get my tier 3. Now the Lion Center, it needs ZG. I need 2 idols for it still. So
someone in your chat just said, "Yeah, man, drink some water."
Yeah,
I was on such a long rant, I got a dry mouth.
I've got Nightbot. Every so often it goes off to tell me to drink water, because at one time I used to stream stupid hours, so it was
my mouth was definitely getting dry. Do you mind if we take a short break, like 30 seconds, and I can go grab a drink real quick?
Oh, that's fine, dude.
I definitely don't want to be, smacking some dry ass lips around while I talk to you. Is that okay?
No, dude, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I will be right back, like 30 seconds to a minute.
All right, man. So, Chad, is there any questions or anything you would like discussed? It gives me a moment to be able to talk and interact more with you guys too. We're gonna kill this guy first. Fine, bro. Oh, because you're Alliance, that's what you do. Look at these, man. Giant, a mongoose.
All right, sorry about that. I'm back.
Oh, it's fine. I'm sitting here fighting somebody on lines.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Are you melee weaving? Looks like you are.
I was kiting him a little bit. He's dead. I was gonna get this rich sword in vain, and he was already getting it, and I was trying to stop him.
Nice.
And then he tried to run away, and I'm like, I gotta kill him. I can't let him go.
I haven't looked at your parses at all. What is your what is your name on your hunter that you just did the AQ40 with?
Big CB hunting. It's the same. It's the same name. It's the same name as my horde hunter. It's on Westfall. Sometimes my parses are really good. Sometimes they're garbage.
What was the name again?
Big CB hunting. I can just show you on stream.
Yeah. No. I got you.
I didn't do too good tonight. I had some blue parses.
Westfall. Let me see here. Oh, dude, you're doing fine. Looks like your best fight is Twin Emperors.
Imps usually is. I usually orange parsing it, and I was like 2 points away from denied for some reason. I do better if I don't pay attention to my parses through the raid, and I started looking at them, and then it's like, oh, they're dropping. I gotta pick it up. So.
Yeah, so we've sort of covered like a lot of topics, and I apologize.
No, you're perfectly fine, dude. You're not.
Being a GM and a dungeon master and sort of all these different things, I pull from lots of sorts of different experiences. So
I've GM'd guilds back in retail before, and I understand like the struggle of recruitment and stuff. And when content's dry, it makes it even harder to be able to recruit people. Makes it difficult for a number of reasons. Like AQ40 is not an exciting raid. People don't enjoy raiding AQ40. It's clear out in the middle of nowhere. There's no really easy way to get to it. I mean, summons is great, but when you're on a PvP server, that can be difficult.
Yep.
But it's just everybody wants snacks because snacks is an amazing raid, and honestly,
I think it will disappoint a lot of people.
Oh, it probably will, to be honest. AQ40 was kind of disappointing for me. I was expecting it to be harder than what it was. For me personally, at least as a player, I was hoping to be challenged more. And the challenge was getting everybody in the guild to perform good enough to not be stuck on content. That was the main reason why I ended up leaving Middleton. Is I was done being stuck. I knew I was too good of a player to be stuck. I got offered opportunity to be in many guilds, but I tried to stick with as many friends as I could. If I was by myself, I probably, I don't know if I went somewhere else or not, but I'd have had a lot more to at least consider.
Yeah, man. It's listen, my own personal situation, I went from being like a 99 parsing warlock, like having all those pink parses and just consistently fucking ass blasting those bosses week to week, to suddenly, like, early on in the guild, like, we were struggling to put together a fucking molten core pug, right? And that shit was ass.
I'm sorry. And, I just had 2 alliance try to jump me and kill me, and I hopped on the flight path and I'm gone.
Fuck him, dude. Listen, we always had like a
Middleton's done.
Fucking
they're done.
Kill on sight policy with Alliance. Game starts at character select screen.
My Alliance Center parses is better, but that
I don't care if you're level 5 or level 60. I was killing you.
That also depends on the guild.
I actually, one of my most enjoyable parts of Classic WoW. So what I did mainly for gold is like, while I was at work, I would farm wind elementals and Zelthus for Essence of Air.
God, I hate that farm. It's the drop rate on that is absolute garbage for me.
It's really luck dependent, right? And I've been doing that since phase 1, so I had like stored up a bunch. So when the price spiked in phase 5, I was like sitting pretty. You know what I'm saying? I actually have like 28 flasks of supreme power on my character that I no longer intend on playing.
Wow.
it's the ass. But Neck Rage was literally like, if you don't have 10,000 gold by phase 6, you're ass at the game. So I was like, oh man, I better get my ass in gear. Fucking farming. So.
Screw farming that much. My gosh, there's other things like I I don't know. Like, I get it. I have a hardcore mentality when it comes to raiding. I like having all my buffs, my consumables, my world buffs and stuff, and that requires gold to get some of that stuff for farming it yourself. And I get it, you know, but I would just there's other things to do outside the game too.
Yeah,
and I think it's
for sure.
And I think it's something
while
that's
I was doing that open air Silithus farm on the Wind Elementals, I ran into this one Alliance mage consistently. His name is Saruman with a special character.
huh,
And for a long time, I thought this motherfucker was a gold farming bot because, my god, he did not try to resist me killing him at all.
really
He did the first couple times, and then he just kept, like, accepting his fate. And
like I'm just gonna die.
I don't know if you know the state of, like, WoW Classic PvP, but, Warlocks?
Oh,
Shit
no.
on mages.
Now listen, warlocks dump on me. It absolutely drives me insane. Like,
It depends. So Warlock versus Hunter matchup is like still skill dependent, right? Like,
well, everyone I run into dumps on me. I did dump on one the other day, but for the most part, they just get me.
if you time your feign death properly and you have like good pet micro and the proper pet, like, if you're fighting a Warlock, you want a bat.
Oh yeah, I have the bat is good not only for the 1 second attack speed, but also Screech. It's good against warriors. It's good against rogues because it puts a debuff on their the amount of damage that they do. So it's just good to have.
Yep. So the best hunters that I've seen were the ones who feigned death properly, and then also the ones who had good pet micro. But in general, like, you win that fight. I feel like a lot of people would say it's Warlock favored, but if the hunter is good at managing his cooldowns and he's properly like aim shotting and being aware of the Warlock's cooldowns, that fight is very winnable for a hunter, for sure.
See, I'm oblivious sometimes.
Said,
there are times
Warlocks just dumpster mages because fucking the mage has the mobility and the control to not die to you, but he doesn't have the damage to kill you. So it's like, you can try and fight me if you're a mage if you want, but it's not going to work out for you. You know, just the Death Coil Shadow Burn combo is going to be half your HP, and like, God forbid I have dots rolling on you and I get off a Shadow Bolt ever, like, you're fucking demolished.
So usually if I get feared once, I'm done. Like, because all the dots is on me now while I'm feared, and then, you know.
Well, the Hunter PvP trinket removes fear, right?
All immobilizing, slowing, and stun effects. I don't think it removes fear.
Oh, the Hunter one doesn't remove fear. You're one of the few classes that doesn't have that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. But I mean, if I had the trinket for the shadow resist and the reflect, it would help a whole lot. I don't have all those little trinkets and stuff either. Like, I'm the type of person, I will just go out on world PvP. I won't use consumables and stuff. I've only recently started carrying some consumables because everybody in Alliance has them. Like, the warrior I killed, he had giant and mongoose on him, and he potted on me too, and I still killed him. And me with just my standard buffs. I did end up using a pot, but
that's another strength of Warlocks. It's like, we can Healthstone and we can major healing pot, which is like, you know, more health than the mage is gonna get back ever. So,
oh yeah, without a doubt.
I mean, they can ice block us, but fuck them, dude.
But
mages, you know, being a Warlock player, I have a certain opinion of mages, but
I hate mages. I hate mages too, so don't worry about it.
I mean, it is a skill class. Like, mages are the class to beat because they have the control, right? They have Frost Nova, they have Polymorph. Like, when a mage gets you right where they want you, you're dead. But it's all about knowing how to fight the mage and knowing how to counter their control. And 99% of the mage players are fucking brain dead.
I'd have to agree with that.
They 99 parse, and all they do is hit Frostbolt or Firebolt over and over again. It's nothing, right?
I'd have to agree with that.
The class is not complicated at all. Whereas, like, Warlocks, if you want to 99 parse, like, if you want to be one of the best Warlocks in the world, you have to do all these sorts of like little things that increase your performance by really not that much, right? Like properly like pet microing and using the black book and using TOEP and knowing where you can put Curse of Agony on a target to slightly increase your DPS on trash mobs or like boss ads. Knowing, for instance, this is something I always, whenever with my Lock Boys was because I doubled as a Warlock class leader as well as a GM, and this is a good tip for any Warlocks playing out there. Your corruption deals damage every 3 seconds, right? And it's an 18-second dot. So if you're recasting corruption at 1 or 2 seconds, you're actually losing a tick of corruption and giving yourself 4 to 5 seconds without getting that Nightfall proc from your affliction talent tree. So it's actually ineffective to do that. What you want to do is you want to keep casting Shadow Bolts and then reapply corruption after it's fallen off so that you have the maximum amount of ticks per corruption to give you that instant cast Shadow Bolt from Nightfall.
That makes sense.
Yep, there you go. I just gave Warlocks the fucking keys to the kingdom. SM Ruin. Don't go that DS Ruin bullshit. That's for 95 parsing Warlocks. You want to be a 99? You get those free fucking Shadow Bolts and you fucking learn to properly manage your corruption dots.
But I think the biggest issue is just phase 5 when it comes to a lot of things. Like I said earlier, people just don't like AQ40. And I know some of the people that, and I don't know if they just gotten busy or what. I mean, real life is a thing. And I think but I also think it's hurt too. People getting burned out on WoW is, essentially we've been on lockdown. There's been nothing else to do. So you just spend all day long sitting here playing WoW because, sure you play other games too, but
lots of people are working remote. They got time to farm.
Yeah. You're just always on. Like it's actually like it's legitimately a part of your life. And some, that's some people, I'm gonna miss. Yeah, and some people's not capable of managing time away from it. Like I've been spending a little bit less time lately myself, just because I know when Shadowlands comes out, I'm off that week from driving the school bus. I'm gonna be on Shadowlands. Like I'll still raid, and I'll still make sure I get my world bus and stuff. And it's a pain in.
If you want a guild to play with, you're welcome to come join too. We'll give you an invite to the server. That's sort of the direction we went with. Is I think mechanically, we may not be able to do mythic difficulty for a while, but I think we have a lot of mechanically good players and the members that I didn't fucking boot from the Discord server for being toxic pieces of shit. And
I mean, you gotta get. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to get rid of the toxic people because they hurt the guild more than they help. I don't care what anybody says.
I booted like 120 people from our Discord.
That's
I ain't
insane.
got no patience for that shit. I literally fucking some of the people who I used to have to deal with.
Gotta get rid of toxic people, Richard.
I couldn't fucking do that anymore. Also, Richard, I know who you are, and I know you're not a toxic piece of shit. So you better fucking redact that statement, motherfucker. Richard's always been a good guy. I've always heard good things about him. You have a good server reputation, even though we've never personally interacted. But
he is toxic though. I'm not gonna lie. Like people think he's a nice guy, but he's toxic.
I mean, same thing with Galvin. Let's not, kid ourselves.
I mean, that's facts. Galvin is toxic.
Galvin's toxic, but he's a good guy.
I agree.
I love that man. I love that man to death. But
so where are y'all playing on Shadowlands?
Oh, we'll be playing on the Archimond server. So
is it East Coast?
Archimond is on Central Standard Time, I believe, but it's like closer to the East Coast Central Standard Time in terms of ping.
I'm not worried about ping. It's that raid times. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, we'll be playing East Coast, and our raid time we'll probably be raiding Monday night. Just sort of.
It's gonna be like 8 to 11, 7 to 10. I think 7 to 10 is an amazing time.
Yeah, somewhere in there, somewhere where
I get up at 5 a.m.
Get off work, they have a couple hours to defunct themselves, and then you log on to Shadowlands and The
I'll get up
Shadowlands grind, from what I've seen and what I've been researching, is going to be between 1 to 3 hours per day, which is better than the 8 to 10 hours per day I was spending on Classic. So to keep your character current and optimized is not going to be very much work at all. If you're running Mythic Dungeons, it's like an hour, maybe
You
less than
100%
an hour
do.
if you're clearing them fast.
Ride a scarab. You are the scarab lord,
It's not
Richard.
very much work at all to keep your character optimized in Shadowlands.
Yeah.
Now, as I release new patches, they're going to stack system upon system, and it's going to become cancerous. But
I just hope they don't do that, like, cause that's what hurt BFA so bad. Was
system upon system.
Yes.
RNG factors.
I hated that they took the artifact power as Azerite power. They got rid of tier gear. That was ridiculous. In the corruption, and it's just I hate it.
So if there's a ray of shining hope here, it's that they're bringing back PvP vendors.
That is true. They are.
Right. So, as someone who only played WoW for the arenas, right, and this is something generally, I talked a little bit about my D&D background. I was also a Master StarCraft player for 3 or 4 years of my life.
God, I was so bad at the first StarCraft.
Oh, dude, StarCraft is. Let's not get onto that topic. But I have a tendency to throw myself wholesale into the game and try to, do the best that I can possibly be. That's why I was a good hardcore raider in the Orenthal, and why I was a good GM in Do, right? But from a PvP perspective, them giving us PvP vendors is Blizzard basically saying, okay, we heard you. You want more control over the gear you get. And as long as they don't put Titan Forging back in the game, and they have all of the systems be linear and progressive, like the things that are wrong with Classic WoW are also the things that make retail WoW right? Like the amount of effort you put into the game,
hopefully
should be the amount of reward you get out of it.
Hopefully by now they've got that fixed. Because if not, after 15 years, you're in a really bad place.
Yeah, I mean, Blizzard's gone down the dumps. I don't even want to talk about Warcraft 3 Reforged or...
I blame Activision for everything.
Yeah, it's really hard to watch the game company that you grew up with and you loved their games, sort of just constantly fuck up.
Could you imagine having Dota and having the opportunity of having the rights to it and everything, and you're like, we don't want it? That was a missed opportunity.
They literally, shot themselves in the foot with Warcraft 3 Reforged for that exact same thing. I was the Warcraft 3 custom map developer too. It's actually where I got my start in programming, was doing fucking Warcraft 3 custom map trigger events.
That's cool.
But they shot themselves in the foot with Warcraft 3 Reforged.
So
my relationship with Blizzard feels like a toxic relationship.
The love-hate relationship.
It right sometimes. Legion was an awesome expansion. They did so many things right with Legion, I think.
I like Legion, but I don't know if I'd say it was awesome.
Out of all the current iterations of retail WoW, it was the best one. It was better than Warlords of Draenor.
There is one. No, there's not. Right? That's Dota. My bad.
They got a lot of things right in there. And they did still get some things wrong, but I mean, for perfection.
The artifact power was the start of the BFA nonsense, in my opinion, with the Azerite power, and then.
Yeah, I think where they went wrong with that though was stacking system upon system. From a game design perspective. I didn't
like the Azerite power system. Period. I thought it was bad.
Have you ever played Shadowrun tabletop, original 2E?
No.
So that game requires you to read 30 pages to move down a hallway, right? When the systems become so convoluted that you're not sure what you're really supposed to be doing, you've added too many systems upon the fucking game. So that's a serious problem with BFA, is that you had the corruption system, you had your cloak levels, you had your, Azerite levels, you had your, Azerite traits, and you were sort of trying to like optimize all these things at once. And when you did optimize them, like it ended up being like some janky shit. Like in arenas, for instance, at like high level arenas, sometimes you would just queue into two like bear druids who were running Twilight Devastation, and they would literally just try to RNG one shot your ass. Like it was awful.
Yeah,
the
I
Twilight
see.
Dev would just deal like 2 million damage to you, and you would be like, "What the fuck, dude?"
Yeah, I've seen some of this stuff, how the PvP stuff is right now with the corruption and whatnot. And I'm not a huge, like, I like PvP, and it's a nice change of pace of doing the same routine over and over, especially in Classic. Because if you're strictly on a PvE server, you're mainly just farming, and hopefully the server's active and you're actually running dungeons and stuff too.
Yeah. I think in terms of what Retail WoW has got right, the biggest thing that they got right was PvE content. They have that shit down to a science. I mean, if you look at the Legion raids, and Taurus was one of the most hardest and most fulfilling raids they ever released. Even in BFA, Nyalotha is a fucking blast to do. You have Rodin, where you're trying to like bounce the orbs. You have the Carapace, which constantly requires, movement from your ranged DPS in the raid and DPSing ads. You have Rathian, which has this sort of like billowing like AoE effect that goes across the map, and you're constantly trying to gauge, where the safe spot is to stand. Retail WoW does PvE content really well. I think if I had any complaints about Retail WoW, it'd be in the PvP department. Having all PvP drops be random, having the stats be random, not being able to optimize like your gear very well for PvP is like all dumb shit that they added in BFA. And one of the reasons I think it wasn't a popular expansion is I think PvE and PvP should be separate. This is one of the things that like TBC got really well, right? When you look at how the mechanics of the game reward you for playing TBC, having a separate PvP stat like resilience made it so the PvP players got to have their gear progression and get rewarded for the effort they put in, whereas the PvE players got to have that extra secondary stat used on something else.
That's
which
true.
Let them get rewarded on, the effort they put in. They should be separate entities. And, if a fully, bissed out raider wants to come in and do PvP, they should be stronger than someone who just started or just completed their like heroic dungeon grind, right? But they shouldn't be equal to a PvPer who's put in 1,000 hours into, acquiring all the sorts of different PvP gear. It like harkens back to this game design discussion we had earlier about like what is good for the game, like what rewards players for the effort they put in, right? And at the end of the day, I think if you were to look at Do, like a lot of it was toxic personalities, a lot of it was fucking bullshit people always having to talk about loot, always having to have some issue with the decision we made. But then a lot of it was, what does the game do? What is this game rewarding us for? What kickback are we getting from engaging with the game systems? And I just think in terms of, Classic WoW, there are better games to play out there if you're interested in becoming a mechanically better MMO player than Classic WoW. And
I mean, you can play retail, and that's the thing too, is like if you think about the skill, and I was good lord, I was having a discussion with a friend the other day about this. Well, early on when Classic came out, is that content in vanilla or in Classic shouldn't be as hard as it was in vanilla, just for the simple fact of a lot of people's played retail, but they've never played this content, so they're going to come try it out, and it's just going to be, and it should be so much easier to do the mechanics and do the fights and stuff. Content should be quicker. Not only just because of all the information, but your skill level should be higher than what the skill level was required to play Classic. To be honest.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, with the Warcraft logs, that's where I think a lot of it, ruined it for me. Is I was judging my skill level based on, a percentage of the other players who were doing the same content, and not my skill level based on what the content needed to be performed. Right. For instance, to complete Patchwork and Noxramas, you only need 300 DPS from every member of your raid. Now I'm pushing like 800 DPS on some bosses, but I'm only getting 97, 98 parses. Think about how that negatively reinforces me as a player to reevaluate my performance versus what is actually required for the content. I think that was a big issue for me. Was trying to compare my personal performance to making sure that I was one of the best warlocks in the world. And
I mainly use it for myself. Be like, all right, this is the boss I've been sucking on. I need to do better this week on this boss. I use it for myself, just for because in my opinion, the only thing is personal improvement. Because your parses depend on the guild you're into. If you've got a guild that's absolutely running through content, your parses in that guild is going to be better than what it is on a guild that spends more time on a boss fight, because it's taking longer to down that boss. So your parses is going to go down no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
So things like that matters, but I use it for personal. I don't try to use it as a, because my parses on my Horde Hunter isn't as good on my Line Center. Overall, my parses are better on Lines. And my Line Center,
you get that insane Blessings of Kings buff. So
the Line Center does have the crossbow out of BWL finally too. I still don't have it on my Horde Hunter. I got it 2 weeks ago.
I saw one of those drop in 8 months of doing Doom.
Yeah,
but I totally agree with you. When I was in the Orin Thule, I did not rejoice in my 97 parses. To me, if I wasn't in the top 10,000 parses for that week, I was doing fucking garbage.
See, I get orange parses, I'm happy.
Yeah, like I was looking for pink parses only, and that's because the Orenthal was a speedrunning guild. We were trying to go in there every single week, and we weren't even engaging. Dude, until I started about 4 months in, when we have some hunter leaves, and we only had 2 hunters in the raid, right, to Trank Shot, I didn't even know Flamegore had a Trank Shot fucking mechanic. I'm gonna be fucking real with you. I had never seen that Flame Pulse, because Flamegore had died in 20 seconds. It only really required 2 or 3 Trank Shots from the hunters in the raid, and we just fucking destroyed it, right?
Yeah.
I was unaware that mechanic had even existed. To me, that boss was just all about managing my corruption tick and managing my shadow bulk, right? That's all that fucking boss was to me.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I only worry about hunter things.
Yeah. From a hunter perspective, obviously you have to worry about the Trank Shot, and you have to worry about all this other shit. But again, when I was in the Orin Thule, I didn't rejoice in my 97 parses. If I wasn't in the top 10,000 for that week, I felt like I had fucked up somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily here for that. I want to parse and I want to do good, and it's more fulfillment out of me personally to see my improvement. But I know that, like I said, that depends on the guild that I'm in too. It doesn't matter how good of a player you are. If you're not in a guild that gets a boss down in X amount of time, you're not going to parse good. It doesn't matter. Now, if you're a healer, you're living your best life because your parses are just going to zoom up. But
healer parses don't matter.
Yeah,
that's the sad truth of the matter, is that healer parses are fucking bullshit. And this is something I learned being the GM of the guild, is that I really had to look at what my healers' output were, what their overheal percentage was, and what their activity was in the total boss fight to really determine their performance.
Richard's
For
mad.
instance, I bet he is. But like, this is something that will help Richard too, because if he is a good healer, this will be true. Like, you can have a healer who puts out 300k during a fight, and a healer who puts out 200k during a fight. But if the healer who puts out 200k has a 30%, lower overheal percentage, if they have a higher activity percentage on the boss, if you can see that they're canceling casts in the replay and only healing when it's effective, that healer is the better healer. It doesn't matter how much healing output they have. Like, healing was honestly some of the most contentious loot we handed out in Loot Council, because just having the top healing number didn't matter. I was looking at overhealing percentage. I was trying to determine healing is such a skill-based class. If anything is mechanically hard in Classic WoW, healing is the most mechanically hard job you can do in a raid.
Yeah, I've healed before and I don't like it. Like, I can do it, but I don't like it.
Well, it's all about like heal sniping and making sure that if you're tank healing, it's about predicting incoming damage.
Right.
That's not always something that's easy to know. When you're tanking Fire Maw, for instance, you have to look out for Fire Maw's regular attack. You have to look out for the fucking like big cleave, whatever bullshit there is. You have to look out for Shadow Flame, and you have to look out for Wing Buffet.
Who's your priest?
And all of those are on a timer, right? Like, and you can set up like weak auras to like see the timer, but those always aren't accurate. So you have to be sort of aware of the sort of flow of the boss fight, and then be able to time a flash heal or a lesser healing wave, and immediately heal the tank right after that damage comes in. Healing is incredibly hard compared to DPSing in Classic. I mean, most of the boss fights in Classic come down to don't exceed the tank's threat limit, right? Or make sure that you're DPSing the ads, right? Like these are like the DPS mechanics you have to worry about. There's so many interdependent factors in healing that it's like, if your healers aren't all on the same page, you're just wasting mana, right? Like, if you pop a lesser healing wave onto a tank and a priest got a flash heal off, 0.5 seconds before you, you've just wasted mana and therefore wasted the guild's resources on that fight. So it's not even like really worth doing that. So you have to be able to like effectively cancel and snipe heals, and it's super mechanically intensive. I have a lot of respect for healers. We had great healers in Do, actually. A lot of our progression was predicated on our healers learning how to heal the fight, and once they did, it always went really smooth. I have nothing but respect for any of the healers in Do. I don't think I kicked a single healer from our Discord when I did that purge. All of them are still in there because they're all incredible people, and among any other class, I don't think there was more understanding for, we only get a certain amount of healing pieces to give out a week, so you need to make sure that you're appreciating when someone else gets loot, even if it's not you who's getting it. We didn't really have any selfish healers. But yeah, I mean, healing is incredibly mechanically intensive, especially on fights like Twin Emperors and Cthulhu and any AoE damage fight, really. Fire Maw.
Now,
I have great respect for healers.
I do have a question for you, and I know this is probably something people's curious about too. Where you and the officers decided to just step away. What made you want to step away from Classic? Was it Shadowlands coming out and you was more interested in Shadowlands, or what essentially was the deal breaker to be like, I'm done with Classic. I'm gonna go live life.
It was Honestly, the biggest factor for me, and I can't really answer for any of my officers, was just the ungratefulness of a lot of the guild members that we dealt with on a regular basis. You know, it was always like, why didn't we get this piece of loot? Why didn't I get this? And the lack of clarity for the person, having to have the same conversations over and over again. You know, it's a common thing. People like to, you know, misquote Albert Einstein. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But
True.
in my case, I was putting in the, you know, the effort week after week after week to try and smooth over the same issues, and people just weren't understanding. You know, we had people in the guild for a month wondering why people who'd been in the guild for a year were getting loot over them, even though their performance was better. And it was like, dude, you've been in the guild for a month. Like, you're 2 weeks off your trial period. Like, you know, what did you expect? And like, it feels like overall, from the guild administration perspective, people forget so quickly the pieces of loot you give to them, but they remember so fondly the pieces of loot they miss.
Right.
And
I mean,
there's so many more pieces of loot that they miss than the pieces of loot that they get, that it just generally bred a toxic atmosphere in the guild. And
that's true.
I'm gonna be real with you. I just wasn't willing to put up with that shit anymore. I'm not going to sit there and invest my
That's very
time
true, Richard.
and my life
Imagine.
with my friends and, you know, my girlfriend, and sit there and try and make the best decision possible and put, you know, 40 hours a week worth of reviewing loot, going over Excel spreadsheets and trying to determine what person is best for what item. For somebody who's, you know, not putting in that work, I mean, think of it this way. The average player in a guild who doesn't have to make decisions about loot, who's not in a leadership position, is spending 20 to 30 hours farming a week and then doing the raids. I was doing that plus another 40 hours worth of effort a week, trying to determine who would be best to receive an item, and trying to, you know, manage this like
I
guild
push for you to get your
administration
2.5,
aspect of it.
Richard.
And it's like,
I tried, bro.
when I'm spending double the amount of time that I am on my job on a video game, and you showed zero appreciation for the factors I make and, you know, to considering a decision.
Yeah, that's just you're not getting
really
any recognition for the amount of time that you put in. I started to make a guild when I first started playing Classic, and I did it first. And then some drama happened with people outside the guild and recruiting, even at the early stages. And I started on Netherwind, and it was super duper small. And it was painful. I was like, man, I really want to spend all this time recruiting, managing people, doing this, doing that. Like, it's going to be it's a job.
It requires a selfless person to be a GM or an officer. You have to be willing. Like, the phrase that I laid down for my officer corps was like, we are second. We are not the first person who comes in priority for this guild. In fact, in terms of loot council, I instituted a rule from the beginning of the guild that no officer was ever allowed to vote for themselves for an item on loot council. Any item an officer received was because everybody else voted for them. You could not vote for yourself.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to say that you wanted an item over another person. That was not something we wanted in our loot council.
Right. I mean, there's
our
only
officers and myself. We were second. We were not first. Right.
And here's a bad thing too. At the end of the day, you can give somebody everything that they want, they still wouldn't be happy. At the end of the day, especially when you got 40 people in a raid, you're not going to make everybody happy. The thing that you have to try to do is have such a good community that everybody likes everybody so much, so they just agree on how things should be done. And it's hard to create that. because you've got certain people that, you know, maybe they have a more hardcore mentality than a casual mentality. And then, you know, they're like, and then people are worried about their parses and stuff, so they do take the time out to get world buffs and whatnot. And then you have some people that's just like, hey, you know, I'm just happy to be here. I'm not gonna worry about getting my world buffs, and I might have consumables this week. I don't know. I didn't get a farm a whole lot.
So, yeah, man. And you're absolutely right.
And it's hard to manage, though. It's hard to manage people to that degree, because you're trying to encourage people who doesn't get consumables and stuff to get them. And the people that are hardcore and stuff, and probably not everybody, but they do kind of become toxic because of it. You know, they start being a negative attitude towards the players that don't put in the time that they do. And, you know, and there's legitimately people out there don't even get an chance. Like Richard said, you know, not everybody wants to be a parse lord. Not everybody wants to clear you know, some people are fine. When I first came back and I was raiding on Alliance, one of the first guilds I joined legitimately we spent 6 hours in BWL, and I was dying. I was dying. And like, thankfully things
I've been there, man. We wiped 13 times on Razor Gore the first time. I went from doing a 45-minute BWO clear to wiping 13 times on Razor Gore in Do. It was awful. It was fucking bad. I feel for you.
I'm not geared,
and
Richard.
You know, that casual versus hardcore dichotomy, that's definitely something we dealt with in our guild. You know, because from the hardcore perspective, if somebody isn't full consuming and somebody isn't full world buffed, they're fucking up your parses.
I mean, it's true.
They're increasing the time that it takes to kill the boss.
It's true.
By not having those things.
I remember Alliance guild I was in, and I made a meme video of it. It's on my YouTube. But this guy was like, and these people outgeared me, you know, they've been doing BWL and stuff. And anytime we would go into MC to do MC and we would do rag, you know, you got to be 10 yards apart. It didn't matter where I went on the map. This dude on his mage, and he's a terrible player, would follow me. It would literally stand beside me. Literally, and I'm like, Jack, you have to move. You can't be that close to me. And he just sucked. He was just bad, and it did not matter. Every time we done rag, he always stood beside me, and we had a big guild meeting one night, and I spoke up, and I was like, you know, because there was no structure in the guild, you know, there was no definitive goals in the guild. You know, what is, you know, the guild charter? You know, what's the purpose of the guild? What are we trying to accomplish here? You know, for us to accomplish these things, this is, you know, you need to have this and this. You need to be pulling these kind of numbers. Like, this guy was on a mage that was getting out DPS by tanks. And one tank was a deep prod tank, if that tells you anything. And he was like in BWL guild like gear. So he was just he was a really bad player. And he's like, you know, and he said, and he was Scottish or something like that, or from Ireland. And he had the big accent. He sounded like William Wallace. But he was like, well, if you're going to worry about numbers, Big C, then you'll be playing alone. I'm like, dude, I was in a world ranked guild. I don't play alone. Like, I just show my credentials of my rating experience. And people's like, yeah, we want you.
Yeah, same thing here. When I interviewed with the Orenthal, it was like, I told them my raid experience, linked them my logs. I was like, yeah.
I mean, I was in By the Sword on Asgalore during Wrath. We was ranked 12th in the U.S. I think we was ranked 127th in the world.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's impressive.
You know,
I mean,
I tanked back then. Playing a hunter is not near as complicated as being a tank, in my opinion. But
I actually have a really funny story for you. You want to hear my really funny tank story from Heroic ICC 25 man? So, you know,
that's why I run
Saffron.
I run MC for that reason, Rich, and to be honest.
Is right before you get to the Lich King, the fucking 11th boss in that raid, right? It has that breath mechanic where you have to stand behind the ice blocks, or else it spreads to people in the raid and it kills everyone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had a member in the raid who left in the middle of that boss fight to make a fucking hot pocket.
Shut up.
He literally left to go make a fucking ham and cheese hot pocket, and he killed everyone. And I was playing a Blood Death Knight. This was maybe a week or two after the patch where they switched the tanking spec from Frost to Blood.
That's
so.
You talk about being upset. I would have been an upset individual.
Oh, dude, everyone was fucking pissed at this dude. He was fucking. There was talks of G kicking him while we were fucking in the boss fight. But I soloed Syndragosa down from fucking 20% health down to 0 as a Blood Death Knight because you had so much fucking sustain. I was using Icebound
it ain't worth it,
Fortitude
Richard.
off a fucking cooldown.
It ain't
I was
worth it.
doing fucking Death Strike, just like trying to like maximize my runes, converting them all into death runes, being like, I gotta get another Death Strike out. If I don't get this fucking heal, like I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
I soloed that boss down from 20% health to 0%.
It's not supposed to stupid at one time.
Right as the fucking dragon dies, this dude comes back and he's like, hey guys, sorry I was making a hot pocket. And everyone just fucking exploded on this dude. It was fucking so bad.
Rich is like, he just watching the world burn while he's enjoying his hot pocket.
Yeah, but like, remember I said I still have a lot of the people in those Wrath guilds, like, still on my Facebook. I still keep in touch with them.
Is that guy?
That dude is one of those people, and I can confirm he has been a fuck up in life since that moment.
He was probably one before that moment, to be honest. Like, let's be realistic here. He was probably a big screwball beforehand.
Oh yeah, man. He's gone from bad situation to bad situation. It's sometimes I see him on my newsfeed and I'm just like, God damn it, you motherfucker.
There's just some people like it. Like, they just, I don't know. Like, I don't know what their attitude is or what it is for them to have that kind of energy. What you know, you must think the cup's half empty, I guess, type of person for you to be struggling like that. Like, and I hate seeing people post on Facebook all the time that they're miserable. Like, I've got this one buddy. Well, I know him. We're not really friends, but I know him. We went to the same high school together. He's a little younger than me. He would be always on Facebook. I can't get enough hours at KFC. I can't get away to work. I have to ride the bus in town. And, you know, if you don't get to the bus at a certain time, and he just constantly yapping about negative stuff. And he was going ham one day about KFC, and his manager, the manager of the KFC he worked at, responded one day. And he's like, you're a liar, dude. He's like, we try to give you more hours, you won't take them. He said, you're a terrible worker. He said, you're lazy. He said, we offer to come get you at your home so that you can work because we need you to work. We need people to work. And you won't answer the phone when we're on our way to come get you. So we don't know if you're home or not. So we just go on to work. And we offer to give you rides and stuff. And like, he just tore into him. It was absolutely ridiculous, but it was well deserved. And I think he got fired shortly after that, to be honest, for roasting KFC when that manager was going beyond what he should as a manager to honestly help him out.
I mean, this is getting a little bit into political ideology.
It's Pokemon.
I don't want to, state my opinions clearly on Twitch because, TOC. But I think that is something valuable in like the Southern, Republican sort of mindset. It's like, your situation sucks. What are you trying to do to change it?
Exactly. I wouldn't necessarily say maybe it is a Republican thing. I just think it's how we're raised at the end of the day.
It's a very Southern thing.
It is a Southern thing. It is a Southern thing, in my opinion. I was taught to always work. You might have a job you don't like, but it's better for you to be working doing something than sitting at home doing nothing.
Absolutely. And
and you just have to.
That's it right there, man. It's like,
and you have to learn to take a bad situation and turn it good. And and a lot of people these days, and even people, there's younger people where I live. I mean, I live in West Virginia, and there's younger people where I live. They don't have that mental fortitude or that toughness and they're maybe 10 years or so, 10 to 15 years younger than me, and they don't have that fortitude or that drive or that desire. And me just being, 10, 15 years older than them that I have, let alone, the older generation of me, the people that's in their 50s and 60s and the drive they, the things that they had to go through. It's just, I think it's a big generational gap too, to be honest.
Yeah. So whenever I look at someone's mindset and sort of what they're going on, and we can relate this back to WoW in a second. I'll tell you the story of my first shaman class lead, which was a shit show. And I'll put him on blast. I'll say his name. This dude's a shitbag. But whenever I look at someone's mindset, I like to always assess the material conditions behind why they're acting like they do. I think humans in general are just organic computers. What you put into them is what you get output. I think back to the psychological experiments they did on rats, where you stick a rat in a cage with absolutely nothing, no companions, no toys, no anything. It will hit, and you stick it in there with a lever that dispenses cocaine in water. It will hit that lever until it fucking dies, right? Because it has nothing else in that cage with it. It will sip that cocaine-laced water until it's fucking dead. But you put a rat in a cage with a bunch of other playmates, some toys, and an environment that's, socially conducive to it succeeding, and you give it that same lever in the cage, it might occasionally go hit that lever, but it's not going to fucking die.
Right.
And so I think for a large part, people are just products of their environments.
And maybe I agree with that, to be honest, because I live in a low income area and drugs is a problem here. And there's really nothing here for you to do. Like, you have to drive an hour to get to an actual place to do things, to go to the mall, to watch movies and whatnot. And even then, the bigger area, the things that's there to do is limited.
It's the same thing in the rural country, dude. I mean, literally the difference between, human psychology and the psychology of, a primate or a rat is not that big. The ability to cognitively form thoughts and be self-aware seems massive, but at the end of the day, the amount of inputs you're putting in or the amount of outputs you're going to put out, if you put someone in a situation where they have poor education and a low amount of resources and they're forced to work in a dead-end job, how the fuck are you gonna not expect them to ruin their own lives? You just have to have that mental fortitude at the end of the day. I'm thankful. This relates back to classic WoW, right? With people receiving loot and the amount of loot pieces you have to give out.
What's good, Jones? How you doing tonight, buddy?
I mean,
there will be choice language here. I
apologize. Resources are scarce, and that the amount of input you get in is not really proportional.
Thank you, Jones. Really appreciate it, dude, for the resub.
Output.
How you tonight, Jones?
And it just sucks. It's a shitty situation to be in, but it's like that rat in that cage. When you have a game that has rewarding systems to the effort that you put in, you may not go hit that lever all that often.
That's true.
When you have a system that doesn't reward players proportional to the effort that they put in, and you force, your guild administration
it's good to see you too, bro.
Situations, and
how you doing, man?
Constantly,
have you finally moved into the new place?
Decisions are made. Of course, that situation's not going to work out great.
I think I think it boils down to, aside from that, it's just a greed of people, though. In this day and age, it's more about what you can do for me versus what I can do for you. It's about, and honestly, it's why you see such a high turnover rate in people in guilds on retail. Is this guild benefiting me? No, then I'm just out. They don't try to build anything that's going to last in the long run. It's quickly form a friendship. People think I'm awesome. I'm going to get what I want out of the guild. Then I'm gone. Now the personal loot did help with that greatly, but you see it here in class of WoW, and there are people, and I've seen several people on the server that's been in multiple guilds and stuff, and you have an idea of who is who. if you're on the server long enough, and you know you had access to the GM discussion on the server Discord too, and that helped obviously. But you know, there's a lot of people out there. It's just, and this is just kind of just how things are in the real world too. You know, it's about just making a quick connection with somebody. Dude, you like me a whole lot. I really want this piece of gear, so maybe because you like me so much, you're going to throw it to me. That's their purpose, in my opinion.
It's and you know, maybe this
slowly
was
but surely, man, it's grown back. Slowly but surely,
ended up disbanding, and why many other guilds will end up disbanding.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't have that I am second attitude.
I know, right? I know when I first joined Victory and Death and I knew it was a loot cancel, they did try to pass me some gear and I was like, nah, bro, I'm new. I understand. You know, let's like give it to the other hunters. They've been in the guild. I'm just here. Just don't throw it to me in the hopes of keeping me. And I don't think they was necessarily doing that, but it's like, you know, go ahead and give it to them. It'll drop again eventually and I'll get it as a hunter. And you know, I'm fine. We end up rolling on the Barb of the Sand Weaver, and I lost a roll on it, but I got one anyways eventually because another one did drop. But
yeah, that's a hard thing to, you know, sort of. I mean, I hate to use this term, but parse. You know, like
I had
when you're in a guild, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're the top performer or you're the bottom performer, you should always have the attitude of I am second. Because the minute you start believing that your relationship with your guild is transactional, that it's a financial relationship, you've deposited something and now you're owed something,
that's
that is going to be the death of you in that guild.
And if you think about it in real life, that's why a lot of friendships don't last.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge problem with interpersonal relationships nowadays. Is people view it as a financial transaction.
Yeah.
There's so much unforgiveness in the world because people think I deposited something and now I'm owed something, and that something wasn't paid back, and so now you've wronged me.
There was something I was taught when I was younger. I lost my mom when I was 16, and there was one thing I was always told. Is that when you're going through a difficult time, you'll find out who your friends really are, because they're the ones that they'll just show up because they know they need to during that period of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I learned really quick at a young age who was my actual friends and who wasn't. And over time, it's transitioned, you know, into adulthood, having an understanding of that too. And, you know, I used to go out of my way to try to make people happy and stuff. And, you know, when I was, you know, at a young age, I learned you can't make everybody happy. It's impossible. Some people just ain't going to like you, or, you know, no matter what you do, you just can't make a person happy. I learned that.
There's that saying as well, you know, don't ever lend a friend money, you know, give them the money freely, because if you have a debt between friends, like that will ruin your friendship. Right?
It could, yeah.
That's entirely true.
Yeah, it depends.
You know, some people are able to maintain that debt-debtor relationship, but you know, I have a friend, right? He was an officer in my guild, and like 7-8 years ago, he was put into a bad, you know, position.
I ain't got $200 to give you, bro.
You know, he had rented an apartment with some of his friends.
Sorry, man.
Maybe some of them weren't paying their portion of the rent.
I'll move you a Baconator though.
Get evicted.
Oof.
And so I lent him money, not just for him, but to pay the entire portion of that month's rent to make sure that he didn't get evicted, because I didn't want him to be without a home.
The thing is, though, Ref, is,
and for 2 or 3 months after that,
there are people out there.
The agreement when I lent him the money was that he'd pay me back, and he kept, you know, telling me, you know,
that when you need them to be there for you, they just won't, because they're not getting nothing out of it by being there for you.
This thing,
it's not benefiting them.
Fix my card so I could get to work.
Oh, Baconator, so you reach your go.
And the things he were saying were legitimate. I could see that they were legitimate because I watched him work on his car. You know,
right?
I helped him take his pet to the vet. I could see why he wasn't paying me back, right? And so after 2 or 3 months, I just decided to forgive that debt. I said, you know what, dude? Don't have to pay me back. It's okay. Consider it as a gift. Don't worry about the money that you owe me.
I have to say the guys that I have that are really close friends, I'm really close friends, we're best friends. I have to say the money thing's not an issue with all of us. Because there's times that, you know, we'll just go out, somebody will buy everybody's food and stuff, and and if something really did come up that help needed to be, it wouldn't even be a thought. And nothing is, and I have to say too that nothing's ever expected back in us, to be given back between us. And I'm extremely fortunate and blessed to have friends like that. And I know not everybody has that either.
I just don't think everyone can be like that, you know? I think the vast majority of people, like when I read that letter from the Guilty You, I said, I vastly underestimated the selfishness of the average person.
Thank you, Jones. I appreciate it, man. Have a good night, dude.
Of the topic here,
I don't know if you moved back in the house yet, but I hope you move into it.
Of people
and
just in the world,
you move into it soon,
not including the game, cannot find it within themselves to not view their personal relationships as a debtor transaction.
There are a lot of people like that.
Debt.
Nice,
Someone's
dude.
always a debtor.
Nice. Congratulations again on that, Jones, by the way, dude. I'm super excited for you.
Personal relationships.
I think a lot of it, and I think a lot of that stuff too depends, and you see it a whole lot more on the internet, on people's thoughts and how they really are, because for some odd reason they just feel like they're protected on the internet. I don't know why. I've noticed this on social media a whole lot, especially out of things I've never expected people to say that absolutely blew my mind that I know. Like, I drive by their house on a regular basis. You know, I've known these people all my life. And it's like, in a sense, a lot of times people's true intentions will come out on the internet, and it blows your mind that they actually behave that way, or that they actually feel that way. And that's kind of how it is on, you know, when it pertains to gear on Classic, is that, you know, they're so focused on that and that greed of having it. And a lot of it, and I think too, a lot of it comes down to how you're raised and stuff. You know, are you raised to be selfless? Are you raised to, you know, put others ahead of you and stuff? And if you're not raised that way, and if you're raised that, oh, you're number one, you're the best, you get everything that you want in life, and then you've got these people in your raid, it's so hard to deal with them because they think they should get it no matter what, you know?
Yep. Yeah, for sure, man.
It's so many things that stems through it that's a problem with loot. And when you got 40 people, it sucks.
3 pieces of loot per boss. And
yeah.
90% of the time, those 3 pieces of loot are going to be garbage. They're not going to be what you want.
Yeah. It's kind of personal loot. It's really personal loot, but it's just for you versus the whole raid.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, here's this piece of gear. It's not really an upgrade, you know. You get your chest, you know, you do this mythic, you know, a certain level of mythic that you need to do, the mythic dungeon, and you go and you open up the chest. It's like, oh, I really need a cloak, and I got gloves, you know.
Yeah, but at least in that situation, you can run an endless amount of mythic 15s.
You can. I'm not.
You know, you're not locked by a time, right? And you're not farming consumable for the mythics. I think we have touched on the core of the issue, though. Like,
yeah, I was just using that as an example of, you know, you're like, man, I really hope I get this upgrade out of this chest, and it's like, oh, you know, you got that disappointment.
Yeah, and it's just like in Classic WoW, it's compounded worse because it's one raid boss per week, and then if it does drop, you know, you have to think, what BIS items have you received in the past month, you know?
Yeah.
Because when we had someone who performed equally in attendance, attitude, and performance, we default to loot recency.
I'd say in the last 2 months, maybe longer, our Horde Hunters only gotten like 3 pieces of gear.
Yeah, man, that sucks.
But I mean, there's really nothing in AQ40 for me either, though. To be honest, like all I need is Jom.
Oh, AQ40 sucks ass for hunters. Are you kidding me?
Jom and Godslayer, but I had to fight with rogues and stuff for that, so it's whatever.
I mean, AQ40 is an awful raid for hunters, especially if you're going for your full T2 sit, Asher Thul. Like, you're just looking at, okay, did I get Jom Gabar? Did I get Barba the Sand Reaver? Do I have, like, main hand, offhand? Like,
yeah.
Fucking hunter loot is ass.
I agree.
And you can obviously tell through the course of this conversation that I put a lot of work into Loot Council because I know the names of all these fucking items.
It's like, it's not my class, but I know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, like I can tell you, you know, how good they are for everyone, and it's I mean, yeah, we've touched on the core of the issue though, which is that
looting people being ungrateful.
The guilds that continue to operate in good faith are just going to get worn down. You know, any guild that's on Kirtonos that's continuing to operate in good faith and, you know, exemplifying the characteristics that I've told you today, I mean, their guild master has to be a stronger person than I was, because I did that for, you know, 10, 11 months and I couldn't do it anymore.
Right. I mean, there's so many things
I just wasn't willing to put up with it.
There's so many things that involves with it too, though. You have to have a really good group of officers that are 100% honest with you about situations that's happening in the guild and stuff, so they can be properly addressed. And it's a big management thing. Honestly, it really is. It's legitimately like you're just running a business, and your business is
we had
raiding.
Nothing but the best officers with you. We could have continued on and cleared NAC. Like, I have no questions about that. It might have taken us a couple weeks of progression. It might have taken us a couple weeks of knowing, you know, where our stopgaps were to, you know, get to Kel'Thuzad. But I have no question about it. That group of people could have stuck through and cleared NACs. We had enough good people to do that. But at the end of the day, you know, I didn't feel anything when we killed the Cthulhu.
Yeah.
I just felt like, here's another problem for me to deal with, right? Who do we give the scepter to?
See, me,
who do we give the, you know, iStock waste cord to? And that just killed my enjoyment of the game. And all of my officers were on the same page. You know, it was like every item we would talk about, we were like, well, if we give it to this person's going to be pissed off. And
somebody's going to be pissed off regardless at the end of the day.
There were never any good decisions to make.
It's probably why it's good I'm not a GM, because I'll be like, well, you're pissed off, you don't like it, you can leave. That's just kind of how I am, really.
But the thing is that, like, if you are a GM and you're operating in that good faith, you know, eventually those people do leave, and then you have to worry about filling up a full 40-man roster, and you have to, like, recruit people from other guilds. And,
you're always
no poaching policy in Do.
You're always
not going to, like, poach people from other guilds.
You're always
having
to recruit.
Formed out of Orenthal, which is Lotus, right? And they've got, I mean, one of their co-GMs is Midian Iskariah.
That's very true,
right?
Richard. But our population here sucks.
One of the best people I've ever known. He was on the lock squad with me. I love that guy.
But the bad thing,
definitely a good person, but I was never going to poach one of his members. I was never going to approach someone and be like, hey, you should come over to Do instead of Lotus.
The bad thing about Kirtonos too is our server population sucks, and that makes it even harder to recruit. I think Horde now we're barely over 2K to be. It's like 2,100 people or something like that. Like on Westfall, where I play Alliance, there's more people on Alliance on that server than what's on Kirtonos as a whole. So,
yep.
And there's other servers that are just huge too.
But even on the high population servers, you know, those good players, there's a lot of competition over them, and you know, the people are constantly trying to poach. And
that's true, but
I just really wasn't willing to stoop down to that level. You know, I think that if you're doing the right things in life and you're, you know, doing the selfless good works you were meant to do, you shouldn't have to stoop down to anyone else's level.
90% are in a good guild.
And
it's another thing too.
Yeah, we absolutely could have done it. I firmly believe we could have cleared Dax.
I think another thing too is now that we're in phase 5, the majority of the guild players are in a guild, like Richard said in chat. So, like,
yeah,
like the Lions Guild looked at with me because, well, when I left Milgen and I joined Victory and Death, it's like, well, I need to find a new Alliance Guild if I want to keep raiding Alliance. And I honestly, I had some friends that I raided with before on the server, and they were in it, and it's like, it's in the top 10 on the server for Alliance. I really enjoy raiding with them, to be honest. It's super nice to clear AQ 40 in an hour in 15 minutes, and just to steamroll through BWO and MC like it's nothing. And it's just, and be able to parse and whatnot. I like raiding efficiently and getting things done, and I don't like screwing around.
Yeah, that's something Richard brought up earlier that I think was a big issue for our guild too. Is when we got into BWL and MC, people do like kills would just dip because they were selfish players. I'm not gonna get loot from this. Well, I'm not gonna come.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
that's a massive issue.
I still run MC on both hunters. I still do.
Do you have Band of Victoria on both hunters?
No. I don't think I've ever seen it drop, to be honest. I mean, if I get it, I get it. It's whatever. Like, one reason why I do it on Alliance is it does give me EPGP, but we also gamble during the raid, and I like winning gold, and I win gold majority of the time, so I don't have to farm. So that's nice.
There you go. Gamble your heart out.
And I just go with a horde guild just to help. I know there's things that people, bitings and whatnot. So, but
yeah.
I hate to cut you off. It's after 11 o'clock, and I'm usually snoring by now, to be honest.
Dude, it's all good.
Not gonna lie.
I think we had an extremely fruitful conversation. I think anyone who goes back and listens to this is gonna be.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna edit some of it because we've ended up talking for quite a while, for 2 hours. Nobody's gonna sit and listen to 2 hours.